So who have you got playing Mystique? Have you got a supermodel or you got Jennifer Lawrence or what?
So I've got Eva Green in there.
Eva Green. She's
I've
very
got
sexy.
I've got Esme Bianco, who's in Game of Thrones. She played Ross in Game of Thrones. Cast is Karis Van Houten.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Karis Van Houten?
Yeah, you know, the witch lady, slayer of little children from Game of Thrones. The one everyone hated.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Okay.
The redheaded lady. For my Mystique, and again, I'm also here for not having to maintain status quo. And I actually decided I would have gone with Liu Yifei, and she was the chick from Mulan, the lead for Mulan, and she was in the movie The Forbidden Kingdom. I thought she would make a great Mystique.
Yeah.
Okay, now we get into the big cheese. I certainly think he's the big cheese of not only the baddies, but of the Marvel Universe. And I'll explain soon why I think he's the big cheese. What do you guys think of Magneto? Who do you want? Start off with you, Gift.
So
who
is
Magneto?
For my Magneto, this is the one that I was like, it needs to be representative across almost most of the board. Like, I needed a Jewish actor, older Jewish actor, to be able to play him and for it to make sense and have a good stature. And I actually came up with two people. My first choice overall would be Stephen Lang, aka the general from Avatar.
Yep, I'll see it.
You know, just because he has that military presence that Magneto presents so well, and as well, I feel like he's also intellectual. Like he'll do some damage. The other person that I chose for it would be Michael Shannon, because he looks like he'll always kill somebody. He's snapping in any moment.
Yeah. Michael Shannon is I can see that. I can see that definitely with Michael Shannon. What about you, JP? Who's your Magneto?
That was hard for me, but on top of my head was Malcom McDowell.
Malcom McDowell. Oh yeah. He doesn't have the height though.
He's fucking evil though.
He is. He doesn't know how to do evil.
Yeah.
He doesn't know how to do evil.
Yeah.
He knows how to do dignified evil.
Yes.
All right. Yeah. I can see Michael. Yeah.
Because he's evil.
Oh, he's got a presence. There's no doubts about. I mean, this guy is Clockwork Orange.
About being tall. I'm not worried about him being tall. I'm worried about him, standing there, just with his cape and.
Yes. I mean,
he could have a good argument with Professor X about the morality of protectionism of how mutants need to go about things.
Yes. Yeah, I can see them arguing.
Yeah. So can I pose some questions about Magneto? From an outsider's point of view, coming into the first X-Men movie, the opening scene is all about Magneto as a child, Eric, going through the Holocaust, right?
Right.
And to me, that was just the best scene to not only open that movie, but to open up the whole X-Men universe to a person like myself who knew nothing about it. It grounded it in reality. Like, I'd never seen a comic book movie at a point that started with the Holocaust, right? The Holocaust, one of the worst things humanity's ever done to itself.
Right.
And it really established to me that in many ways, in the whole X-Men universe, Magneto is the protagonist. It's his story. It's his fear of segregation. It's his fear of persecution that drives the whole X-Men universe from what I could see. And then when they opened, I think First Class? They opened up with, again, Magneto with Kevin Bacon's character back into that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. With that, it really enforced to me that how much that Holocaust story is definitely symbolic of what the X-Men universe is all about, right?
Yeah.
And then I started thinking about Magneto in a new reboot, in an MCU reboot, right? The first question that came to mind is, should he actually be a Holocaust victim?
Yes.
Like you were saying before, he was Jewish. That's a long time ago, right? Now, I don't know the aging process of this, but he would be. There's not many people from the Holocaust around and kicking in a powerful, energetic way now. But also because it's been done twice before, are we looking for a new event, a more recent event that would scar someone as heavily as Magneto to drive that character in the X-Men MCU universe? So, for example, a Vietnamese person who survived Agent Orange, or a person, a Tutsi from Rwanda. Do we have to think outside the Holocaust box, or is that sacrilegious to the X-Men story? That's the question. Because
So I'll say this: there's only two events, in my opinion, that would hold the weight that makes the most sense within the, let's say, within the American audience and to a larger extent a global audience. Magneto has to either be a direct result of Jim Crow segregation, or it has to be a result of Holocaust.
Yes.
Any other genocides, while the trauma of genocide exists, the question is the long-standing segregation that comes after that. With the Rwanda incident, there was obviously the issue of the Hutus and Tutsis, and that was kind of baked into creating this rivalry just because of colonization. But its elements after time became more and more reduced as terms of Hutus and Tutsis not segregate. Well, I mean, they still have their issues, but not having this highest level of segregation and impact over culture. So it wasn't a thievery of culture. It wasn't just an extermination over time. It's the same, even with the Kosovo situation. There's a lot of war events that occur, but it's what happens after those events that make everything work. Because the stand-ins because you got to remember, the stand-ins for Magneto and Professor X are Malcolm X and Martin Luther King.
Yep.
So that's why I said it would have to come out of either a Jim Crow segregation era, or it has to come from the Holocaust. The Holocaust is low-hanging fruit for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
And it still would be relevant, even though it's much longer time period, but it would still hold some water there. But it would be a much riskier take, which they kind of already did with Killmonger, to do it off of a Jim Crow segregation element. But I don't know if it would be as effective just because of, I guess if they tied it in with Killmonger, it would be interesting. But I don't think there's very much that there's not very much that would have the level trauma unless they brought him from a different country's genocide and then inserted him into that place. So
Kosovo would be the one because that was pretty bloody horrific.
Right.
What they did.
You could also use the Chechens as another opportunity and make them more Russian Jew.
Yeah. Because there is something. Yeah. What do you think, JP?
I think they should leave it alone. Especially, and it's as much as it's happened a long time ago, it's still timely now, with the racial tensions everywhere you go, and there's a rise in fascism and racism and white supremacy groups all over the world. So I think that's very timely. They should leave it alone. So people are reminded that these things happened. These things were horrible, and that's why you have heroes fighting this kind of horrors,
Yeah.
So for me, they should leave it. Because if we move away from it, then it's sort of like forgetting
the purpose.
Where the X-Men came from, what it was mirroring, what it represented.
Right.
I mean, it's an interesting question to ask. I mean, it brings up all kinds of, interesting issues, updating the character, updating the situation. But you're right, guys, in saying that, the Holocaust rings enormously through history as just such an act of systematic brutality that really goes. I mean, there's brutality in the world, right? And we see the Armenians and the Turks, and we see stuff in Kuwait, Haiti, and all that stuff. We see all that kind of stuff. But there's something super ugly about what happened in the Holocaust that it sits at the back of Magneto's mind and just resonates through his brain in every word he says. That makes us think, this guy, I think he's one of the best villains ever because of that reason. And to be honest, I would be perfectly happy if Fassbender came back and played that character because I think he did really well. I love Fassbender in that character. He's got gravity and he brings that seriousness to it. And same with McKellen, but I'm also happy to move on at the same time.
Let's remind our friends to please click on the subscribe button and hit that notification bell so you know when we have new videos out.
Subscribe!